It began on a Saturday afternoon that seemed no different from any other. Yet, what unfolded inside a crowded grocery store in Jefferson City, Missouri, would leave everyone frozen in disbelief. A single sentence, dripping with venom, turned a mundane moment into a public reckoning. And in that silence, a truth emerged that no one could ignore. The aisles buzzed with the ordinary chaos of weekend shopping. Carts clattered. Registers beeped. Laughter rose and fell in little bursts of small-town chatter. In the middle of it all stood a tall black man in his early 30s. His presence was calm, almost invisible to the rhythm of the store. White shirt, jeans, a basket with only bread, fruit, and milk. He chatted casually with the cashier. His easy smile met with hers. For a moment, life was simple, untouched, unbroken. But just behind him, a storm was brewing. An older woman, late 60s, clutched her overflowing cart with stiff hands. Her face was sharp, her movements impatient, her eyes darting toward the man with something colder than annoyance. Then, without warning, her bitterness cut through the hum of the store like a blade. "Why don't you go back to Africa?" The words were not shouted. They didn't need to be. They carried enough poison to silence an entire room. The cashier froze mid-scan. Conversations died mid-sentence. Children stared wide-eyed while parents pulled them closer. The man in white turned slowly, his face unreadable. The crowd braced for a fight, for rage, for the eruption that surely must come. But instead, came silence. He studied her with a stillness that unsettled everyone watching. His calmness was not weakness. It was sharper than anger, heavier than any shout. Around them, people shifted uncomfortably. A young man lifted his phone, already recording, as if sensing this moment would not pass unnoticed. "Excuse me?" the man finally said, his voice quiet, steady, forcing those nearby to lean closer. The woman crossed her arms, her chin rising with practiced arrogance. "You heard me," she snapped. "People like you don't belong here." The words seemed to hang in the air, thick, suffocating. A teenage girl whispered to her father, "Aren't you going to say something?" But he only shook his head. A store filled with dozens of people, all silent, all watching, yet no one stepping in. The man's gaze did not waver. His calmness only grew more unsettling. And then he spoke again. "Do you know where I'm from?" His tone was not defensive, not desperate, just deliberate. Each word carried weight. The woman scoffed. "What difference does it make?" The man stepped closer, not with aggression, but with the quiet power of someone who owned the ground beneath his feet. "It makes all the difference." The room seemed to hold its breath. Even the store manager, watching nervously from a distance, stayed rooted in place. The man's eyes swept across the crowd before settling back on the woman. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, deliberate, but carried with it a weight that silenced even the faint hum of the freezers. "This is my home," he said. "My family has lived here for generations." He paused, letting the words sink in. His calmness was disarming, but there was steel beneath it. "My great-grandfather built houses in this very city, homes that some of your families still live in. My grandmother worked double shifts as a nurse, caring for this community when others turned their backs. My father went to war for this country, fought for a land that didn't always fight for him. And me, I was born here. I've paid my taxes here. I've raised my children here. This soil is as much mine as it is yours." For the first time, the woman's defiance cracked. Her chin lowered just slightly, her grip on the cart handle tightening as if to shield herself from his words. Around them, people shifted, their discomfort transforming into something else. Guilt, shame, perhaps even admiration. The man stepped closer, his movements calm, deliberate. His voice grew stronger, his presence filling the room. "You told me to go back to Africa," he said. "Do you even understand the Africa you're talking about? My ancestors didn't choose to come here. They were stolen, ripped from their homes, chained, dragged across oceans, forced to bleed and suffer so this country could be built. Their blood is in this soil beneath your feet. Their sweat raised these walls, their backs carried its weight. And when slavery ended, they didn't stop building. They endured. They worked. They kept pushing so that people like you and me could stand in a place like this, free to shop for groceries. The crowd was no longer shifting with unease. They were transfixed. A young woman near the deli counter wiped at her eyes. A man in a baseball cap, arms folded, nodded silently, his jaw tight with respect. Even the cashier, her hands frozen on the register, blinked back tears as if his words had cut straight through her. But the man wasn't finished. His voice deepened, steady as a drumbeat. "My father fought in Vietnam," he continued. He came home to restaurants that wouldn't serve him, to neighbors who still called him boy. But he kept believing that this country could live up to its promise. Believing in its potential to be better. He locked eyes with the woman once more. "So when you tell me to go back, I need you to understand something. There is no back. This country isn't just yours. It's ours. Every nail my great-grandfather hammered, every life my grandmother saved, every drop of blood my ancestors spilled. They belong here. I belong here, and I'm not going anywhere." The store seemed to breathe as one, the tension cracking under the weight of truth. A murmur ran through the crowd, not loud but powerful, like a tide turning. The woman's face flushed, her eyes darting to the floor as though the ground beneath her had betrayed her. But the man didn't gloat, didn't raise his voice. His calmness remained sharp as glass, forcing her to confront the ugliness of her words. The man exhaled slowly, his calmness unbroken. He didn't need anger. His voice carried something stronger, something sharper. "When I hear words like yours," he said, "they don't break me. They don't even surprise me anymore. But they remind me of how much work is still left to do." The woman shifted uncomfortably, her arms folding tighter across her chest. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but the man raised his hand, not to silence her but to signal patience, to let him finish. "You told me to go back to Africa," he continued. "But do you know what else I hear in those words? I hear the pain of centuries. I hear the echoes of chains clattering in the dark. I hear the cries of families torn apart, of children sold like cattle, of men and women stripped of their names, their dignity, their very humanity. My people were forced here against their will, yet they survived. They endured. They transformed suffering into strength, and they built the foundation of the very country you claim as yours." Every word hung heavy in the air. The cashier's eyes glistened, her hands trembling as she tried to steady them on the register. A man near the frozen food aisle muttered, "He's right," under his breath, though no one dared to break the silence fully. The man's voice deepened, his words carving through the air like stone etched into memory. "And when slavery ended, it didn't end the fight. My great-grandfather stayed here, building homes, churches, schools, places for people to live, to dream, to hope. My grandmother wore the uniform of a nurse, healing those who would never see her as equal, working nights when the world refused to see her worth. My father fought for this country, even when it wouldn't fight for him. He faced bullets in a jungle thousands of miles away, only to return home to closed doors and hateful stares. Yet he still believed. He still hoped." The man took a deliberate step closer to the woman, not menacing, simply undeniable. His calm eyes met hers, and for the first time, her defiance faltered. "And now here I stand," he said, "a son of their sacrifice. I was born here. I work here. I raise my children here. I give to this country, though it has not always given to me. And I will keep giving, not because it is flawless, but because it is mine. Ours." His words rang with finality, leaving the woman no space to hide. "But you," his tone softened, almost pitying, "you carry hate like it's a weapon, when in truth it's a chain. Hatred doesn't build. It doesn't heal. It doesn't create. It only destroys. And it's not just destroying the people you aim it at. It's destroying you. That bitterness you carry, it shrinks your world until all you have left is anger. And you don't deserve that. None of us do." The woman's hands trembled visibly now. Her grip on the cart loosened. She blinked rapidly, her hardened face cracking just enough to reveal something else: confusion, guilt, maybe even fear. The crowd, silent until now, seemed to lean forward, holding on to his every word. The store had transformed into a courtroom without walls, the man's voice the gavel that shook everyone awake. The woman's face, once hard and unyielding, began to shift. Her eyes darted downward, as if the weight of his words pressed on her chest like a stone. Her fingers trembled around the handle of her cart until finally she let go. The cart stood between them like a wall, but she was no longer gripping it as a shield. The silence stretched thick, broken only by the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above. Then, unexpectedly, the first voice rose. Not his, not hers, but from the cashier. That was beautiful, she whispered, her voice shaking but loud enough to carry through the silence. Her eyes glistened openly now, tears streaking down her cheeks. Her words seemed to unlock the crowd. A man in a denim jacket clapped, slow and deliberate. One by one, others joined in, hesitant at first, then stronger, until the applause rolled through the store like a quiet storm breaking. It wasn't wild or celebratory. It was raw, honest. The kind of applause born not from entertainment, but from the recognition of truth. The older woman's face flushed. Her defiance crumbled into something more fragile, uncertainty, reflection, shame. She parted her lips, her voice breaking. I didn't mean... She faltered, struggling to find words. I didn't think... The man raised his hand gently, stopping her. Not to silence, but to spare her the humiliation of unfinished excuses. His voice was calm, forgiving, but steady as stone. It's all right, he said softly. What matters isn't what you said. It's what you choose to do after this. We all stumble. We all carry flaws. But growth only happens when we face them. Her lips quivered. A single tear rolled down her cheek. I'm sorry. The words escaped her. Fragile but genuine, stripped of pride. The man offered her a small nod, a quiet smile that carried more dignity than victory. Apology accepted, he said simply. The crowd exhaled collectively, as though the entire store had been holding its breath. Tension dissolved into something else. Relief, reflection, even hope. People looked at one another differently now, softer, more aware. The air itself felt lighter, though the gravity of the moment remained etched in their expressions. From the back of the crowd, a boy no older than 10 stepped forward, clutching a candy bar in his hand. His small voice rose timidly but clear enough to carry, "Mr. What you said was really brave." The man crouched down, lowering himself to the boy's level. His voice softened, warm. "Thank you. But remember this, kindness is the bravest thing anyone can do. If you hold on to that, you'll always be strong." The boy nodded, smiling shyly before retreating into his mother's arms. She looked at the man with gratitude, her eyes shining. Even the store manager, who had stood frozen at the edge of the scene, finally stepped forward. Clearing his throat, his voice carried the weight of nervous authority. "Sir, on behalf of the store, I want to apologize. That behavior isn't acceptable, and we'll make sure it's addressed." The man met his eyes, then extended his hand in a firm, dignified gesture. "Thank you," he replied. "That means something." The manager shook his hand, but it was clear who had truly commanded the room. As the applause softened and people turned back to their carts, a subtle hush lingered. Conversations resumed, but with a different tone. Quieter, reflective, as if everyone carried a piece of the moment with them. The older woman stood aside, her earlier fury dissolved into pensive silence. The man gathered his groceries, pausing at the register. The young cashier leaned toward him, her voice trembling but firm. "I'll never forget what you said today," she whispered. "I think none of us will." He gave her a weary smile. "Sometimes it's not about the words. It's about the reminder that we're all connected, whether we like it or not." The cashier nodded, swallowing hard, her hands still trembling as she scanned the last of his items. The man collected his grocery bags, his movements unhurried, calm, as though the storm he had just endured never touched him. Yet everyone in the room knew otherwise. They had seen it. They had felt it. His words lingered like smoke that refused to clear. As he turned to leave, he stopped once more near the boy who had spoken earlier. Lowering himself again, he met the child's eyes. "Remember what I told you," he said gently. "Kindness is strength. It's braver than hate, braver than anger. Hold on to that, and you'll grow into someone who changes the world." The boy clutched his candy bar tightly and nodded, his small voice whispering, "I will." The man patted his shoulder, offering a faint but sincere smile. Then he rose, turned toward the exit, and walked steadily forward. The automatic doors slid open with a hushed whoosh. Sunlight spilled into the store, framing his figure as he stepped outside. He carried no arrogance, no triumph, only dignity. His head held high, he disappeared into the brightness, leaving behind silence that felt heavier than sound. The older woman remained by her cart, motionless. Her expression was no longer hardened, no longer defiant. Instead, it was something raw, unguarded, a woman staring into the mirror of her own cruelty and seeing it for what it was. Her eyes glistened, her lips pressed into a trembling line. She said nothing, but the weight of her silence spoke louder than any excuse. Maybe she would carry this moment for the rest of her life. Maybe this was the fracture that would make her question the walls she had built within herself. A turning point, a scar that might someday heal into wisdom. The store gradually returned to motion. Carts rolled again, scanners beeped again, but the rhythm was different now. Shoppers moved with quieter steps, exchanging fleeting glances that carried unspoken acknowledgement. We were here. We saw this. Some avoided looking at the woman. Others glanced at the door where the man had vanished, as if trying to hold on to the echo of his presence. The young cashier wiped at her eyes, her hands still trembling. Her heart changed in ways she would never forget. Injustice had been spoken aloud, but it had been shattered, not by fists, not by rage, but by truth, by calm, by courage. One man's refusal to bend under the weight of hate had forced an entire room to confront what they often chose to ignore. The air still buzzed with it, a moment that couldn't be undone. And perhaps that was the greatest victory of all, not that he silenced her, but that he left everyone else unable to return to who they were before. Sometimes it takes just one voice to break centuries of silence, one moment to shatter ignorance, one reminder of our shared humanity to turn strangers into witnesses of truth. If this story moved you, don't let it vanish here. Share it, carry it. Let it stir something inside you, because the fight against hate isn't just his fight, it's ours. And if you believe these untold truths must be heard, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Together we will uncover what others try to bury, and expose the darkness with light.